lovable DX7. I do love this instrument. A couple of days ago, somebody sent me a question on the channel about setting up his studio. And I do apologise if you're watching this and I haven't answered your question quite correctly. I need some more information about how your studio is set up or how your rig's set up. But I tried to give the individual some pointers. But what it did say to me was, it said to me how important it is to get the MIDI set up correct on the instrument, especially if you're using some legacy kit like the DX7 or like the D50, which is under this cover here. You know, they were around before USB interfaces pitched up, and therefore don't give you the luxury of being able to interface using USB. It has to be done via MIDI. So I'm quite fortunate, because when I put my studio together a couple of years back, or when I re-put my studio together a couple of years back, I went out and bought one of these multi-port interfaces for MIDI. So that pretty much allows me to have each instrument on its own separate port. So I've got 16 channels available for each port, and therefore I tend to have most of my stuff on channel, receiving on channel 1 and transmitting on channel 1 of the MIDI setup. Now obviously, if you don't have that luxury, you could have different instruments in your rig sending and receiving on different MIDI channels, so it is quite important to get it all set up correctly. So on the DX7, in order to check or change your MIDI channel, first thing to do is you hit that single button at the top there, and then you hit the edit button, and then way over here on the DX7 II anyway, and I can't remember whether it's the same on the one, because it's many years since I had my one. You've got button 31, which is MIDI 1. If you press that, it goes through a number of menus. Just keep pressing it until you find the menu that says channel messages, okay? And it should be flashing transmit channel. That should be where the cursor is. And as I said, on my one, which is about there, and unfortunately because of the screen display is a bit old, you can't see this on the video, but my one says transmit channel 1. If I wanted to change that, I use the plus and minus keys to move it up through the MIDI channels up to 16. Okay. One word to the wise: if you have the ability when you get up to 16, and it can go to MIDI, transmit on all MIDI channels, never ever set it. You'll end up with getting MIDI feedback, and you then end up with sticky notes, and that's the worst thing you want when you're trying to debug what's gone wrong in your setup. Is having something that's just homing notes around the MIDI channels. So as I said, mine is set to 1, and then if I use the arrow keys at the top here, the next menu over is the receive channel, and again, I can't speak for the one because I can't remember what the one did, but definitely on the 2, you can actually have a separate retrieve channel for your A bank of instruments and your B bank of instruments, okay, or patches or sounds or whatever you want to call them. I tend to only pretty much play this in one instrument at a time. I don't tend to layer the sounds up, or if I do layer the sounds up, I layer the A's on the B's. So I don't mind them being triggered by the same channel. In this case, again, I've got mine being triggered by channel 1. Use the arrow keys to go from A to B, and use the plus and the minus to change the channels up and down, like so. And then you've got obviously the Omni, which you should always have on. Okay, so there's no real reason to switch that off out of Omni mode, but you can do if you wanted to. So there you go. The other thing to look at is on the receive channels, and I've seen this, is that quite sometimes there can be a sort of set of things that happen, and I can't tell you what they are, but I've seen that if it happens, then the channels, the MIDI channels, effectively set themselves into off mode, which is like so. and that could be the cause of your problem. So just make sure that your MIDI channels are on and set to a channel number. And then to get yourself out of this, once you've set your channels up, press single, you're back in play mode, away you go.